I'm trying to produce a generation of conscious eaters who understand that what happens on their plate affects the world and themselves more than anything else they do. I just want them to understand the stakes. I'm not telling anybody what to eat. I'm just saying learn about where your food comes from and then make your choice.
And it's not just about individual choices. You're so good at putting this in both cultural and political context. Back in 2007, you wrote that the Farm Bill dictates what our kids eat for lunch at school, and that it, quote, treats our children as a human disposal for all the unhealthful calories that the Farm Bill has encouraged American farmers to overproduce. Wow. So what's the connection?
Well, you know, our school nutrition program, which is coming up for reauthorization in the next few months, and I think it's going to be a really important political battle because I think Michelle Obama is joining that battle, which is a terrific thing. When we started this program, it was because the public health problem we had amongst our kids was simply not enough calories. They needed more calories. And that aligned very well with the goals of the food industry, which is to get rid of calories because of the overproduction of the food system. So we basically forced this food, this cheap beef and processed chicken down this process to our kids. But the needs of our kids have changed. Now they need better quality calories, not just calories. Now they need fresh fruits and vegetables, and we're still sending down the junk, and we're treating them as disposals. We had this crisis in the pork industry because with swine flu, people thought they could get it from pork. You can't, but people thought you could, so they stopped eating pork. The pork industry goes to the government and says, we need a bailout. They get hundreds of millions of dollars from the USDA to buy their pork, and what do they do with it? Give it to the school lunch program. So that's how we're using it. We need to, we're basically educating a new generation of fast food consumers in our schools, and we need to educate a very different kind of generation.
And the Institute of Medicine recently issued a report that outlines recommendations for improved standards for the school lunch program, which haven't been reviewed since 1995. So what should kids be eating for lunch? What would you put in the school lunch program?
Well, I think, first of all, it needs to be cooked in the schools. I mean, right now, most schools have lost the ability to cook food. They microwave it. And as soon as you microwave food, you're going to be feeding processed food. And processed food invariably has high levels of salt, sugar, and fat. So I think it has got to be cooked food. It can be all different kinds of things. There's nothing wrong with giving them meat or even, hamburgers and things like that. That's real food. But it just has to be really cooked, and obviously more fresh fruits and vegetables. If we can give our schools another $1 per student per day, those schools could buy food from local farmers, give a tremendous boost to the local food economy and the rural economy, and help with the kids' health. We also have to give them a little more time to eat. I really agree with Alice Waters. We should be giving them credit for a good lunch, just the way we give you credit to play games and do physical education.
And more time to eat? Go into that a little more?
Yeah, well, look, if you're giving kids chicken nuggets, tater tots, and 10 minutes to eat it in, you are basically saying, here's how to be a fast food consumer. Kids need to sit down at a table with other kids, have a conversation, realize that food is about communion. It's not just about fueling up. And it's a really important life skill and daily ritual, and we're giving short shrift to it. I also think we need to do recess before lunch because it's very hard to get kids to sit down if they're going to, if they're going to get out to the playground.
The quicker I can finish my lunch, the quicker I can get to the playground.
Play. Yeah. So let them, burn off that energy outside, then come in and sit down for a nice lunch.
Michael Pollan here talking about the repackaging of his book, The Omnivore's Dilemma, for kids. Also a coming PBS documentary next week, a version of his first book about food, The Botany of Desire. And that'll air next Wednesday night, the 28th, 8 p.m. on PBS. And this is the book in which you tell the story of 4 crops: tulips, potatoes, apples, and marijuana. How are these stories adapted for TV? What are we going to see?
Well, you're going to see those 4 stories. Thank God. There was some effort to make me change marijuana into a legal crop like wine, grapes, or something like that. But we stuck to our guns.
Well, you're not saying, come on, kids, smoke pot, are you?
No, but the way this book looks at marijuana is a little different than the sanctioned way of thinking about marijuana, which is essentially, as a moral issue and as a crime issue. And my take on it was very different. I was just, looking at this human desire to change consciousness, which appears to be universal. What is that about? And what has marijuana taught us about the human brain? So I kind of was bracketing the drug war conversation and wanted to have a real scientific and philosophical discussion of this amazing plant. And, what are the odds that a plant would evolve a molecule that could change the content of human brains? And why is it doing that? And those are the questions that engaged me. But it was very hard to talk that way. And I knew when we got funding for this film that the drug war was on its last legs.
Huh. Well, even President Obama would disagree with that statement, I'm sure. But what does it have to do with tulips and potatoes and apples to get back to the botany of desire? What's the unifying idea there?
The unifying idea, this was the book where this is the kernel of a lot of the subsequent food work, but it's where I came to understand that domestication is a two-way street, that, we didn't just tell the apple what to do, to be big and red and sweet. We were being manipulated by the apple also to attract its attention, get us to spread its genes, and that we humans are a lot like bees. We get duped by flowers, by fruits, into doing work for them. And that once you start to look at nature this way, from the plant's eye view, everything looks very different. And you realize as humans that we are really woven right into the fabric of nature, which most of us, we know intellectually, but we don't feel it. We still think we're different. We have a relationship to nature. What other creature has a relationship to nature? We are in nature. And once you explore these relations, we've had these really amazing histories with the tulip and the potato and marijuana and the apple. You realize that, we're right in there with all the other creatures, making these evolutionary votes, being selected. We've changed in these relationships too. We can digest things we couldn't digest before. We evolved to be able to digest milk and grain. And that was to serve the plants.